Well, we got some more stuff to get to. Let's get to some cryptid stuff. We haven't touched on cryptids for a while. There is a new movie out by Small Town Monsters. Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters put out a new movie. It is pretty interesting. It's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half long, and they touch on specifically werewolf-like creatures in Louisiana, specifically like around New Orleans and the swamp areas. But I think pretty much all of Louisiana swamp. But they touch on these weird stories that I hadn't heard of dog-man creatures in the area. That stem from various folklore and intertwinings of different cultures ranging from Native Americans, French cultures, and Catholicism. It all gets wrapped up down there. And this first clip that I pulled kind of goes into some of the origins of these stories down there. There's a lot, and this hopefully will give you a little brief overview of what people may experience down there.
There are some legends that say, and naturally so, that if there were a beast, living somewhere in Louisiana that fits that description, it would be in these parts of Louisiana, because, a creature like that would want to be away from humanity and somewhere that people can't really access. It's possible that some kind of creature like the Rougarou would choose that type of terrain to live in.
Most stories have the Rougarou as wolf-like, 8 feet, 9 feet tall, red eyes usually, hairy body, strong muscular, claws, red eyes. That's the thing that I think I most remember about the vision I have of a Rougarou, is that just these red glaring eyes at night. I mean, something's interesting to this area. We say wolf, but there are no wolves in southern Louisiana. There are coyotes and things like that. I think for those stories coming from French Canada and then also from France, coming down here, I think there were some variations of that because the animal didn't really exist in the area. It was mostly coyotes and things like that.
A lot of the folklore in the area attribute the sightings of these werewolves, dogmen, or Rougarou is what they call them down there, as a curse. Either you get cursed and you transform, you shapeshift into one of these creatures because you didn't obey the local rules. Like, you can't hunt after certain sacred days. Like, you have to wait like 9 days after a religious holiday, else you may turn into one. Or if you happen to kill an animal in a particular way, you will turn into one of these things. Or if you dig up Native American artifacts from the ground, you will be visited by one of these creatures and or turn into one of them. Now, there are stories that people have encountered these Rougarous out in the middle of the swamp in the woods, and oftentimes, as they were described, red piercing eyes, about 6 to 7 feet tall, like basically a dog standing on its hind legs, and that these creatures will try to provoke the human into injuring them, because the only way you can release the curse is if the Rougarou has its blood spilled, at which point in time the curse is released. The Rougarou goes back to being human, but then the curse is passed over to the new person who drew blood on the Rougarou. Pretty intense kind of stuff right there. Here's another clip of some of the origins around the Rougarou, dogman, or werewolf, you want to call it that.
Different tribes occupied Louisiana, and with the variety of cultures came various stories of humans with the ability to transform. Choctaw legend speaks of the Stuckini, malicious witches who look human during the day. At night, however, they transform themselves into undead owl beasts, feeding on human hearts and consuming souls that would later be regurgitated. Another Choctaw legend is the Kashihotapolo, a creature that manifests with cloven hooves and deer legs on a human body. Yet another Choctaw legend warns hunters about a creature known as the Nalusa Falaya, a shadowy, tall, thin humanoid with pointed ears and a pointed snout. This monster patrols the woods and swamps away from populated areas. Undoubtedly, some influence on the Rougarou legend came from the French Canadians, particularly the Acadians, who moved into Louisiana centuries ago. The Acadians lived in eastern Canada. They occupied areas of Quebec, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia. Prior to leaving Canada, the Acadians were fierce allies with the Micmac tribe during the French and Indian War. Not only did these two groups fight together, but also live together at times. Certainly, through this closeness, Micmac lore could easily weave its way into stories that the Acadians would eventually bring to Louisiana.
Now, with all this folklore, there is superstition around it. Like, if you happen to see a Rougarou in the swamp, you are not allowed to talk about it for 101 days. 101 days. Or you risk being turned into one of these creatures. You're not allowed to go hunting after major holidays for like 9 days. Else you risk being turned into one of these things. A lot of, like, as mentioned there, a combination of folklore ranging from Native American to French Canadian, all kind of going into one area. But they all had similar kind of legends about Dogman kind of creatures. Out in the West, there is the Skinwalker, which is a shape-shifting wolf-like creature that was summoned by the darker elements, the darker mysticism of some Native American tribes out there as a curse on some more dominant Native American tribes that were slaughtering other tribes. And so they conjured the Skinwalker as a form of revenge against their enemies. But in the case in Louisiana here, they're saying that the Rougarou is more of a protector of the land and the wildlife there, and not so much as a form of vengeance, unless you go out of your way to dig up artifacts, which there are plenty of stories of people being visited by the Rougarou after they dig up arrowheads or various other artifacts. And they're kind of haunted until they're hounded, no pun intended, until they put those items back in the ground. Now, a lot of it does seem fairly evil, malicious. I guess if you encounter a red-eyed dogman in the woods, you're probably going to say, holy crap, I can't believe I'm seeing this, and I want to get away as soon as possible. I don't want to have anything to do with this kind of creature. But there are stories of friendly dogmen that are looking out for humans. And here's a clip about that.
In this part of the country, the Rougarou isn't just a regional boogeyman or a ghost given physical form. The beast is said to appear for a multitude of reasons, in a myriad of ways, to people of all ages, but especially to children. Although most see the Rougarou as something to be feared, there are times the beast transitions from the role of a monster to that of a guardian. Before stories of the French Rougarou crossed the Atlantic, some tales spoke of a shapeshifter that went against the stereotypical brutish nature. On the way back to his monastery, Abbot Gilbert, in a sleep-induced haze, fell from his horse and was injured. His wounds were serious enough that the scent of his blood drew the attention of wildcats, keen to make him their next meal. Too weak to defend himself, the abbot survives solely due to the interference of a werewolf.
So, a werewolf saved that guy's life.
Wow, that's great.
It is good news, absolutely. That's all the clips I pulled. I pulled a few more. They're longer form clips that just kind of go into more depth, some more personal accounts of people from Louisiana talking about encounters from or the encounters they had with the Rougarou, but nothing super interesting besides a guy that went hunting when he shouldn't have and was chased home by a large wolf creature. But I looked around for additional Dogman and werewolf kind of stories, and I got two. Like I said, this is not confined to that location. And one of the things I wish that they would have done in this news movie is look at some of the parallels of other stories and other folklore more. They focused on Louisiana. I wish they would have tried to make more parallels to the Skinwalkers out west. They do mention it, obviously, in the movie, but they don't draw any heavy comparisons. They don't spend a lot of time on it. But all over the world, people see dogmen. They see these upright canines that are massive and by all accounts are not very friendly at all. I got this story here. I got two stories. First one is from West Virginia, 1980. And this took place at about 4 p.m. And so a man and his fiancée were walking on a narrow wooded trail when they heard what sounded like a bear coming up towards them from the left side of the trail. The mountain had thick underbrush on both sides of the trail, so they were unable to see exactly what it was until it stepped onto the trail approximately 20 to 30 feet in front of them. They described seeing a large black furred animal that was much larger than a bear and had a long bushy tail and a pointed snout similar to a wolf. When it first appeared on the trail, it was walking on all fours. They both noticed a foul odor coming from it, and it made the hairs stand on its end, made their hair stand on its end. At first, it seemed the creature was unaware that they were even there, so they stayed completely quiet as the man eased his fiancée behind him in a feeble attempt to protect her in case the thing decided to attack. When it stepped on the trail, it suddenly came to a stop, stood up on its hind legs like a man, and then turned and stared at them. It had small eyes that shone bright neon red. It was about 7 feet tall. It then walked off the very steep side of the mountain to the right of the trail, still standing on its hind legs. And that's the last I saw of it. Just a quick interaction, a quick sighting, and it wandered off. But that's West Virginia in 1980. Just like sightings of Bigfoot and Sasquatch that happen from all across the world, very similar descriptions, very brief encounters, and they seem to stink. Stories of Bigfoot smelling very awful is very commonplace, and now Dogman, they stink to high hell, Joe. These things stink.
Yeah, well, you skipped over. Yeah, well, maybe we could leave out some, mane and tail for Bigfoot.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. You would think if you're out in the wilderness, there's all them rivers and shit. Like that's what I keep thinking. Somebody was telling me about the winter here in Austin when I was down in Mexico, and they were like, "Yeah, there was no water. We were literally boiling snow. There's no electricity or water here in this building." I was like, that's pretty crazy. So if I were a Bigfoot, I'd be like, I'm just going to jump in the river for the day. It's hot, maybe I'll clean off some of this. Dogman was like humping my leg. He might have spooged. So let's just go ahead and just jump in. I don't know.
Maybe.
You don't want to be clean. You don't want to be clean.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you take your dog to either get bathed or groomed, and they're smelling all nice and clean. And then as soon as my dog gets home, they roll around in the first piece of filth that they find on the ground,
Yeah, dead animals, whatever they can find.
Yeah, whatever.
My girl doesn't like it. The boy, he likes being clean, but she hates it. She'll roll in anything dead. But you passed over the Rougarou being a protector. You didn't pass over it. A couple of things I was thinking of, but we were doing a lot of that connecting stuff on the show with like all these similarities between all the different cryptids we talked about. And this is Seth. Well, he was on the show, right? 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's been on the show a few times.
Yeah. So, but I do think there's something more, like it's almost like that cryptid stuff. It does need somebody who's going to go out there and put the pieces together. And I always thought that your like 411 stuff was kind of I don't know where it all ties in, but it is interesting. But my jokes were going to be about like Rougarou, the protector, You can't say anything about your encounter unless you say toodaloo. Not
Okay. I like that. You have to say the proper phrasing.
right, because he's got rules, right? You can only hunt certain animals in certain ways. So, this is my idea. And then
Say hootaloo to the Rougarou.
that's right. Hootaloo to the Rougarou. And then is there any way, since they're known to fight, can we get a Rougarou versus a kangaroo?
Well, I did find this interesting encounter. As I was looking for Wolfman, Dogman kind of stories, I found something. So the folklore from the Rougarou is a combination of French Canadian, Quebecians, and Native American folklore, all coming together to possibly create this new amalgamation of a Dogman out in the swamp. And through that, I found the story from Quebec in 1940. And this is a different versus battle, Joe. But
different
it is
versus battle, different cryptid versus.
Yes, this is a versus battle.
This is like Godzilla, but in King Kong, but with the cryptids.
Yeah. So I didn't know what to make of this. This is so kind of weird. I wanted to bring this to the show, and here it is. It's like this is from Quebec in 1940, right around 2 p.m. So Homadas and Damas had gone out snow skating in an isolated field near a lake. As they stopped to rest by a forested area, they saw a large white wolf leaving the woods, walking very slowly and looking back in the direction of the trees. The wolf stopped about 35 meters from the witnesses. Suddenly, out of the woods, 6 small men emerged, only about 2.5 feet tall, all similar in appearance with yellowish faces, wearing dark green garb. The wolf stood there as if paralyzed, looking at the small figures. The small men apparently did not see the witnesses. They stared at the wolf and pointed their fingers at it. They spoke very quickly between them in a rapid-fire, unintelligible language. One of the beings advanced to within a few feet of the large wolf. The being then raised his hand and pronounced a few words at the wolf. Suddenly, the wolf threw himself on the being, quickly tearing it apart, scattering its remains on the snow. A strange vapor or mist is seen rising from the dead alien or being, and the other 5 little men stumbled back and stare at the wolf. The mass suddenly grabs a dead tree branch and threw it at the wolf that scattered and disappeared into the wolves, howling at the same time. One of the small men then produces a small plastic-looking bag, approaches the remains of the dead humanoid that was torn apart by the wolf. He collects it, puts the scattered pieces in the bag, and picks it up. At this point, they're unable to control themselves, both Hamadas and Damas. They begin vomiting all over the place. The 5 small men then walk back into the woods. The 2 witnesses put on their ski boots and follow the little men, who were easy to follow since they left small tracks of snow. The traces led to a large hollow on the ground, free from snow. The traces stopped there, though. While looking around the area where the small humanoid was killed by the wolf, Damas found a piece of small, gelatinous, rubber-like substance, green in color, on the ground. They attempted to cut it with the axe they had, but they were unable to. As of right now, the whereabouts of that evidence is unknown. So that's the end of that story. You have a wolf attacking small aliens in the wood. One died, and then they disappear. They just vanish into the woods. I don't know what to make of it.
Okay, well, that clears up my question. I was going to ask you what the hell you make of it, but yeah, what about the vomit? What did they throw up? What is I don't know. You're just like, you watch an alien and a wolf fight and you just start barfing?
Yes. It's that traumatic. It's tough to know if there was some sort of like aroma.
Gore,
maybe they were so frightened by what they saw. They saw these 6 humanoids come out and that's probably very traumatic. If it's your first alien encounter, They're like, oh wow, look, an alien. Oh look, it's getting ripped apart by a wolf. That's crazy.
That is a little crazy. It could have been Love's Truck Stop Sushi.
Does that do that to you sometimes?
I know at least Love's Arby's does, but I can almost guarantee a Truck Stop Sushi is going to get you vomiting,
I don't know,
no matter what you see.
I don't know if 1940s Quebec had Arby's.
That's probably a good thing.
When was the first
or sushi?
Arby's?
Sushi wasn't even big here, so yeah.
I'm not sure when the first
Okay, well then
Arby's
cut the
was.
shit with the axe bullshit. How come you can't cut it?
I don't know. It was very tough material, apparently.
Okay. All right.
But yeah.
Next time.
Yep. All right. Well, that's kind of all I got on Dogman and werewolves right now, but I'll keep looking, people. I'll keep looking.
Give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links. Be a part of the magic.